Welcome to Equipped in Grace, where we talk about following Jesus in the chaos of real life. I'm Vinny Pizarski, and if you've ever wondered how to bring your Sunday faith into your Monday meetings, your parenting, your relationships, or just your everyday mess, this podcast is for you. So, let's get outside of the church pew and get equipped for discipleship in the wild world in which we live. In this episode, we're diving back into our Selah series. Selah being that ambiguous word in the Bible that could have multiple meanings. Last week, we talked about Selah as rest or pause, and the importance of taking time to breathe between the moments of busyness and chaos in our lives. Today, we're joined again by the Director of Worship Arts at Grace Church in Perrysburg, Caitlin Pizarski. She's going to help us look at another potential meaning of the word Selah, which is reflection. And Caitlin has added a second word onto this, which is absorption. Now, that is a particularly curious word to me, as I generally only think about absorption in relation to sponges and household cleaning products. So, Caitlin, what do you think of when it comes to absorption and its relation to the word Selah?
Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking of, is a sponge.
Oh.
Because our brains are like sponges. We see this with kids, right? They just absorb everything that you tell them, and if you say something, they're gonna...
So true.
Yeah, they're gonna spit it back out.
Looking forward to that as Oliver, our kid, gets older.
Yeah, and he already is absorbing so much, but our brains need time to absorb the information that we're learning and to take in what's going on. And I think about that word with music as well. Everything in my life, I feel like, relates back to music.
Yes, it's true for both of us.
But I started taking piano lessons when I was 5 and have been a piano teacher for the last 8 years. So in that time, now I was not a good student, mind you. So I'm just putting a disclaimer out there, but I've found that the time that we give ourselves to actually absorb what we're doing, and not just the actual act of practicing where we're playing the same measures or we're playing the song over and over and over again, is so important to us learning, because we need time for our brains to really understand what it is that we're doing.
Yeah.
Same with a test in school or something that you're studying for, is if you're trying to just cram in a bunch of information last minute, you're not going to remember it. Because your brain needs time to actually absorb what it is that you're reading so that you can actually learn it and not just memorize and spit something back out.
That is so true. I think I just started a new job and I'm learning all these new passwords and all these new procedures and things I'm supposed to tell customers. And it's very difficult. Because right now it's just 3 days a week as this job starts off. And it's not enough for me to really absorb, because those days are broken up. And I notice every time I come back in over the weekend, all those passwords and things, just they're gone. They didn't actually sink in. They're being crammed in throughout the day as we work with customers, and then it's just gone. So I'm kind of already seeing where you're tracking with this whole absorption thing as it relates to Scripture. Are we, and our walk with God, are we absorbing what's happening and not just speed reading through large passages of Scripture as an example?
Right. Because if we're trying to read like a whole chapter of the Bible, if we're just plowing through it to say we read it, we're not actually going to understand the fullness of what we read, because there's just so much to it. But if you took one verse and you just sat with that verse for a week and let it just sink into your life, let it sink into your mind and your heart, what it is that it's actually saying, you're going to remember that verse probably more than if you had just read a whole 26 verses to get the gist of a story. You're going to really miss what it's actually trying to teach you.
Yeah, and I think you've probably heard me rant about this before. My poor wife hears all my rants. But I'm not a big fan of read the Bible in a year plan. And not that I'm saying people shouldn't do it. It probably works really well for some people. It did not work for me. And I think looking back, that word absorb is the chief reason why it didn't. I couldn't cram that much information into my head to let it sink in and let God tell me what he wanted to tell me with it. I think if we just read something point blank really quickly and don't really let it sink in, it's actually a little bit easier to misinterpret what it's saying. I think after a while, I just started to see the rules of the Bible and not see God's love anywhere in it. And I had to stop my reading plan because it was actually pushing me away from God, not closer to God. Because I wasn't absorbing things. It was getting to be just a to-do list. I just had to check it off each day, reading these huge passages of scripture, which, again, Bible in a year plan works for some people, depending on what season or walk that they're in their walk of faith. But for me, it was not life-giving. And because I couldn't absorb or retain what was happening, and I was just getting lost in it.
Yeah, and then it's very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much to the Bible. And actually, one of kind of my, I want to say favorite practices, but a practice I really enjoy is taking hymns and reading through hymns to understand the references and the words. And sometimes hymns feel so lofty. And I have no idea what they're saying, but they're beautiful. I just don't actually understand the fullness of what they're saying because there are sometimes words in there that I just really don't know. We don't use regularly.
Yeah.
And one of those is Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful hymn. And I sat and just went line by line going through what all this hymn was actually saying. And now if I lead this hymn, I always stop to explain one word specifically in the second verse, because it says, "Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come." That's a big phrase.
I think I need you to explain that whole sentence.
Right. So,
hither by thine help I have come.
Yeah. And they say, like, they phrase everything very...
It's an older form of
very
English.
High. Yes.
It sounds really smart.
Yeah.
It's probably just normal English to them.
Well, it is pretty smart. I mean, honestly. No. But the word Ebenezer, because we think of Ebenezer Scrooge.
Absolutely.
There's no other Ebenezer.
Hither by Mr. Scrooge I've come.
Yeah. And so that word, I always explain it because I don't want it to take you out of the beauty of what we're praying. Yeah. And worshiping. But that word Ebenezer comes from 1 Samuel 7:12. And it means stone of help. So in this story, Samuel raises the stone for the Israelites to remember a victory that they had over the Philistines. And he wanted to give the people a physical reminder of what God had done for them. Because in this victory, he wanted them to remember that it wasn't the Israelites who did this. This victory was on God. God won the battle for them. And so it's this remembering the faithfulness of God and the goodness of God and what he had done for them. So I like to, reflect on the hymns, but that's such a good one that really pertains to what we're talking about of taking that time to reflect and to remember even how faithful God has been to us.
Yeah, so the Ebenezer is like a memento, basically. Yeah. We get little mementos. We go on vacation. We get a cheap snow globe from Hawaii, which makes complete and total sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We have a Santa Claus riding a Harley Davidson from the time we went to Gatlinburg, yes. And we put that on our Christmas tree. It's a Christmas ornament. And I remember it was from our honeymoon. And I remember our honeymoon every time we look at it, even though those things are, none of those things are related. Santa Claus really has nothing to do with motorcycles. And neither of those things are very prominent in Gatlinburg unless there's a Harley factory nearby.
No, and we didn't get married at Christmas, so it really doesn't make sense.
Absolutely nothing. But I still remember our honeymoon in Gatlinburg and all the fun we had. So that's just great. So there's so many things there. You've already kind of explained a practical way to reflect on Scripture is to look at the words you don't know and learn them, but also to approach it from hymns or worship songs that you like that are on the radio right now. They're all based on Scripture.
Yeah.
So if you start looking at those words and finding the scriptures that they're based on, you're teaching yourself, which is something that I always do to help me remember things, is to teach it back to myself, like I would be teaching a class, or if I was explaining it to somebody else, how would I explain it? That always helps me remember what I've just learned. It's really the only way I remember what I learn, or because otherwise it doesn't stick. And then that whole memento thing, that makes me want to wonder, that's not something I've done with Scripture. I mean, not really to look at what God has done for me. So what do you think are some ways that I and our listeners could create some Ebenezers in our life?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Write down.
That's what Scripture is.
Yeah. Write down where God has been faithful to you. Keep a gratitude journal where you just write down something that you're grateful for, a moment where God showed up. If you're, a really big writer, you can journal that out and write the whole story out, because it's so beautiful to go back and look where you were struggling with something and God showed up in a big way or a small way, or he put someone else in your path to have a conversation with you that inspired you or encouraged you or whatever it is. Write those things down so that you remember them and you can go back to them and reflect on them and remember God's goodness. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a writer, take a picture.
Ooh.
Take a picture of that, that cardinal that showed up at just the right moment, or the rainbow that you saw on your drive home. Whatever it is, because then when you're looking back through your camera roll, in between all of the recipes you're trying to save, or that cool car you saw pull up next to you, you're going to remember also just some of the beauties of the world around you, of what God is doing in your life. Which is, for some of us, that's going to be easier than journaling. Sometimes writing it out is harder, or not a discipline that
I'm worse
practicing.
Yeah, I'm worse at going back and reading what I've written. I journaled for a very, very long time, many years, decades. I don't really keep track. And I was not very good at going back and reading them. I'll go to a conference and I'll take notes, and I have to forcefully remind myself to go back and read those notes. So I actually remember what I learned from the conference. So I love the photo idea. Yeah. Take a picture of the screen of the radio for the song that played at just the right time. Whatever it is, whatever small little thing. Yeah. So as you go back, because I will go back and look through my photos. We're constantly doing that, looking for a picture of Oliver, or I have some pictures of
just
our
whatever
honeymoon.
it is.
Yeah. Whatever it is we're trying to find.
Yeah.
And you happen across other pictures, and that reminds you of those moments. That's actually, I like that. That's worth a try. That's something that's certainly more effective for me as someone who's a writer, but apparently not a rereader.
Yeah. Well, and I find that there are things that I don't want to go back and read, and because they're harder. They're just seasons of life that I've moved past or whatever.
Yeah.
But just thinking of the pictures, I had a really hard time postpartum.
Sure. Yep.
I really struggled for a number of reasons, and I was so hard on myself and just really struggled to find the joy in being a mom. And as much as I wanted it and I was so excited for it, and it was just a really hard season in so many ways. And I find now, though, I'm so grateful that we have 5 million pictures. That might be a bit hyperbolic, but we have so many pictures of our sweet boy. And
if we count your mom's pictures, I think we're close.
Yeah, probably. But now I'm so grateful to have those pictures and to look back on them, because I look back at myself in the pictures and I have so much more grace for myself and just going like, okay, maybe I'm not the ugliest person in the world. Remembering that there was still joy in those moments. We have the video of Oliver's first laugh and his, like hearing him giggle and just all of that. I can look back on that time with so much more grace for myself and just look back on the goodness of it, and also remember how faithful God has been in the last year. Just to walk with me, and the people that have walked with me through this last year and who've loved me through it. Those photos are such a beautiful reminder. And I think with reflecting as well, I think when we look back on how God has been faithful in our lives, and we look back on even the hard seasons of our lives, and we remember the difficult things that we've been through, when we see someone else going through those difficult times, I would hope that knowing we walked through something like that, we can have so much more grace and love and patience for people who are entering into a season like that.
Yeah. I think there's a song I like that comes to mind. It's by Switchfoot. The shadow proves the sunshine. And it's just a fact of physics. If there is a shadow, it is caused by the fact that there is a sunshine. But I think sometimes we're going through a hard season, we only see the shadows that we're in. But for you, your Ebenezer is those pictures of Oliver from that time where you were struggling, coming out of labor and postpartum depression. You can look back at those things, at those pictures, and you can see where the sunshine was while you were in the shadow. And that works both ways. Sometimes we judge people who are going through a shadow that we haven't been through. Then we go through it, and then we understand. We can see, right. Then we see them in a different light. We see what they walked through in a different light, and we have a better appreciation for it and more grace for ourselves and others, which is a very powerful thing. I think that actually leads into, we can tie back into the whole sponge and paper towel kind of thing. Our brain is a sponge, and I only think of absorption in terms of house cleaning products. Because I think this is something very relevant for us with a 1-year-old he's very good at disorganizing things and leaving messes throughout the house, as I'm sure many parents have experienced.
Or animals. If you have pets, I mean.
Yeah. So if you're in a hurry to get out of the house, in the morning, and you're walking past all these messes, reflection would be like looking back at all the messes. But reflection is useful, but if we're not absorbing it, if you don't actually get out the paper towels and whatever else you need to clean up that mess and absorb it, right? Then you can look back on your day, and I do this sometimes. I look back and I go, "Hey, man, I learned this powerful lesson today, but I didn't do anything to write it down, absorb it, make an Ebenezer out of it." And then by the next day, I've forgotten that lesson. And I feel like it would be equivalent to, you look back, you see all those messes that your animal or your kid has made in the hallway, and then you go, "Oh yeah, I got to clean those up." And then you go out the door, you come home, you walk right past all those messes again, and you just never clean them up. And I feel like God sometimes does that, at least in my life. If there's a lesson I'm not learning, I will continue to walk through it. And I see it in the situations like that frustrate me. That's probably where God is trying to work on me and trying to teach me something.
Yeah.
But if I never stop to reflect on that and go, okay, why is this frustrating me? Why is this so hard? And then absorb what God is trying to teach me in that. Like if I work it out with God and figure out the solution, or how I'm supposed to change my attitude or perspective and remember it, I'll be doomed to continue to learn that lesson again and again.
Yeah. I mean, so the first word we talked about was stop.
Yes.
Or pause. Not really a full stop, but a pause.
A pause. Yeah.
In the chaos.
A rest.
And then we have the time to look at what's going on. And if you're like in a frantic, hurried state, everything's chaos. Everything feels so out of control. Like that's your time to like look at it and go, well, what got me here? Maybe there's a discipline missing in my life where there's something else that I should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Maybe before bed, I need to take the time to make sure the dishes are all clean before I go to bed instead of scrolling on my phone for an hour, right? Not that I'm guilty of that.
I think we're all guilty
at all, of that. But, just like even in a very practical sense of what this time of reflection can look like, it's not even just reflecting specifically on scripture, but also take time to reflect in your own life of where are the messy points, where are the points where it's like, okay, God, I feel like I need some growth here.
Yeah.
To set yourself up for success. And then next week we're going to talk about what comes out of that. But
ooh, yes. I see where you're tying that in. I'm already excited for next week's episode.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Yes. So let's go ahead and wrap up this week's discussion on Selah as reflection and absorption. We hope that you have absorbed some good information that can be applied to your life and walk with the Lord. As we had begun to hint at, next episode we'll dive into Selah as worship. What does it look like to worship God as a response to the seasons of shadow and difficulty in our lives, and as a response to the seasons of sunshine and freedom? If that sounds like something you'd like to know more about, then, as always, we look forward to having you along for the discussion. Before you go, consider giving us a like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or follow this show and leave a review on the podcast app of your choice. New episodes of Equipped in Grace are posted every Wednesday, and we look forward to having you along for the next one. Until then, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Bye-bye.